Good evening and welcome to Common Cause New York's annual awards dinner. As mentioned by the voice of God, I am Irin Carmon. I'm a reporter at MSNBC. I'm also the co-author of the book that you see on your table, which I'm honored to present before you, Notorious RBG, The Life and Times of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So I just want to give you a little bit of a sneak preview. I understand that one member of each table will get to take home a copy of the book, and I'm happy to sign it if you'd like to. So my colleagues and I, my co-author and I, did not just compare Justice Ginsburg to a 400-pound Brooklyn rapper. We also wrote about her prodigious commitment to social justice. We talked about her long-standing work on the Equal Protection Clause to secure a place for women under the law. But here's the thing. I think you can tell by the book's cover that we also had some fun. Did you know that Justice Ginsburg can do 20 push-ups at the age of 83, having had cancer twice? She told me she takes a breath after the first 10. We can also report that Justice Ginsburg has a habit of wearing particular neckwear over her robe, depending on whether she's in the majority or the minority of the court's opinion. So if you're sitting in that room and you see Justice Ginsburg walk in, you know what to look for. And I just want to mention a couple of days in which Justice Ginsburg's neckwear was extremely relevant to the people in this room. In fact, the notorious RBG phenomenon began on the day that the court gutted the Voting Rights Act in 2013. As many of you know, pre-clearance under the Voting Rights Act had helped ensure that the most vulnerable populations, disproportionately people of color, disproportionately in the South, would be protected in their access to the ballot. When the court declared that such protection was no longer needed, Justice Ginsburg was wearing her dissenting jabot. It's kind of spiky. She was asked to explain it. She said, "It's suitable for dissenting." That speaks for itself. But Justice Ginsburg spoke for many people's frustrations when she delivered her dissent from the bench that day and delivered the immortal lines that were in fact the first lines on the notorious RBG Tumblr that inspired the book. Rejecting preclearance, Justice Ginsburg wrote, was like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. Just as Justice Ginsburg predicted, as many of you in the room know, a torrent of restrictions on the right to vote have followed at the state level. Justice Ginsburg has said of this phenomenon, "We put down the umbrella because we weren't getting wet, but the storm is raging." That's why the work that Common Cause has been doing on behalf of the Voting Rights Advancement Act, which would restore and update the defanged Voting Rights Act, is so important. In fact, it was Common Cause and Common Cause's work that gave Justice Ginsburg the chance to dust off her majority jabot, which we don't get to see very often these days. Common Cause led the coalition that successfully pushed for the ballot initiative that created Arizona's Independent Redistricting Commission. When that commission's validity reached the Supreme Court, Common Cause also filed an amicus brief in support of it. And in June, there was Justice Ginsburg with the majority caller, with the majority opinion, not only upholding the Independent Redistricting Commission with a majority of the court's justices with her, but quoting from Common Cause. She said that Arizona voters sought to restore the core principle that voters should choose their representatives and not the other way around. Just this month, just this month, Justice Ginsburg brought out that majority opinion caller again in Evenwell versus Abbott, another case in which Common Cause filed an amicus brief. In that brief, they wrote, "Equal representation is not only a requirement of equal protection, it is also a constitutional structure by which the full guarantee of equal protection of the laws is achieved." Justice Ginsburg, who, as I mentioned, is responsible more than anyone else for ensuring that women come under the guarantees of the Equal Protection Clause, agreed. After all, she pointed out, women did not count as voters until 1920. Now, what all of these initiatives and these opinions have in common is something that has guided Justice Ginsburg, and it's guided so many people in this room. It's the principle of equal citizenship under the law, regardless of gender, regardless of race, or any other category that divides us. It happens to be the fundamental spirit of Common Cause, and it's a commitment profoundly demonstrated by tonight's honorees. I just want to tell one more notorious RBG story. Shortly before she was nominated to the Supreme Court, then Judge Ginsburg, age 60, went whitewater rafting in Colorado. The instructor took one look at her and said, "I think it's better if you sit in the back of the room, the back of the raft, because if we hit a rock, you are going to go flying." She looked right back at him and she said, "I don't sit in the back." And if you page through the book, you can actually find a picture of her, guns blazing, on that raft, courtesy of Professor Bert Newborn. So there's another woman who doesn't sit in the back, and that is Susan Lerner. I'm honored to be introducing Susan Lerner, the Executive Director of Common Cause New York. Now, her voice is always vital for the reasons that I just mentioned, but as many of you in the room surely know, in about a week, in exactly a week, the New York primary is going to take place. I'm a reporter, and I know how much we need perspectives on the proper functioning of government, voting rights, access to the ballot, transparency in campaign finance. In fact, you could say that Common Cause New York's agenda has been at the forefront of the campaign this year. So long before mainstream candidates were lining up to say the system was rigged, Susan was writing extensively on campaign finance, ethics, redistricting, and transparency. She joined Common Cause in 2007, and since then she's spearheaded Common Cause's well-regarded redistricting reform effort. It was Common Cause New York that drew the only set of statewide reform district maps for both the state legislature and the US Congress. You can find many of those suggested districts in adopted form today. We can also thank Susan for the top donor disclosure law passed last year through the New York City Council. In California, Susan led the California Clean Money Campaign and Californians for Fair Independent Judges. She spent 20 years as a litigator in both California and New York. Please welcome Susan Lerner.